There were 3 sheets of paper. There were 3 lists. One was called Get to Know, one was called Can Wait, and one was called Leg Thing. On the 14th of July 1995, a 13-year-old boy who goes by the name Thaddeus Phillips moved into the city of Baraboo, Wisconsin, together with his family, hoping to have a great life in a beautiful city. But little did he know that he would be lying on his neighbor's bed with broken bones, fighting for his survival just 2 weeks after moving there. He has become the latest victim of the Bonebreaker, and the hope of survival seems bleak. This is the story of a young boy who dared to face death in the face. What did he pass through? Did he survive? This and more is what you'd find out in today's video.
Threw myself down the stairs and I dragged myself in the living room. And this took, I don't know how many hours it took, but I kept passing in and out in and out. And I got almost to the kitchen doorway right before it. And then he came in with his girlfriend. And I'm thinking, be smart, don't make him mad. So I'm laying there and I'm listening and I'm being quiet as hell. They're in there talking and kissing, I can hear him and stuff. Then she leaves. And he comes walking in the living room and his eyes just bulged out of his head to see me down there like that.
With that said, let's go deep into the deep dark ordeal of Thad and the Bonebreaker. The infamous Baraboo Bonebreaker was a killer who was in the habit of killing a young boy every summer in the worst way possible. He would capture them either by kidnapping them or luring them stylishly into his apartment, and then he would go through a ritual of breaking their bones, starting with the legs to the neck, till there is no life left in the body of his victims. According to Thad, his captor not only enjoys breaking bones, but he also enjoys the sound of breaking bones. The Bonebreaker terrorizes the small community of Baraboo for years, but his deed will catch up with him sooner or later. That was the last and only victim that survived the treacherous ordeal from the Bonebreaker. For 50 hours, Thad Phillip fought and survived on his own against the Bonebreaker, and when he realized that he was not his only victim, he knew that he had to find his way back to his family and ensure that he was the last victim of the Bonebreaker.
Yes, it's me. Sorry.
But before we get to Thad's story, we have to go back to the beginning. After the 1st of July celebrations, 14-year-old Christian Steiner went to bed early. When it was about 10 p.m, his father took him minutes to check on him and found him sleeping peacefully on his bed. However, the following, Chris's father would soon come to the horrific realization that his son was in fact not in bed. His parents, who said that something might have happened to him, quickly contacted the police. Initially, they thought that Chris had snuck out of the house, since it was the weekend of the 4th of July celebration. After a proper search through the house, they first noticed that the door to the patio, which should have been locked, was suspiciously found open. A detective was then sent to their house to properly investigate the matter. Upon further investigations, within a few minutes after his arrival, the detective found no signs of foul play. The screen on Chris's window was cut off, and there were muddy footprints in and outside the house. The shoe sizes were obviously bigger than what Chris wore. Unfortunately, there were no leads on the case, and swim hours turned to days, until one day when the police made a green discovery. 6 days after the event, a partially submerged body was found floating in the river nearby. It turned out to be the body of the missing boy. From then on, a small community was sent into a frenzy of panic, and the full-fledged investigation began. During the investigation, Chris's parents took it upon themselves to ask questions from their neighbors, and one man's name kept popping up. His name is Joseph Clark. He was famous for being a local teenage bully with a taste for trouble. But despite the name mentioned and whatnot, there was no concrete evidence tying Joseph Clark to what just happened in that community. And soon, Chris's case became a cold one. Nothing major happened in the small community of Baraboo until a year later, when Thad and his family moved into the city.
I opened up my eyes a little bit and I'm being carried through my den in our new house, and it's nothing really new to me because my mom and dad carried me to bed when I'd fall asleep before.
Connie and Donald Phillips have just moved into town with the children, one of which is Thaddeus Phillip. Thad, together with his siblings, had started schooling a week before the incident. On the 28th of July, The family decided to have a cozy movie night after dinner. Thad fell asleep watching the TV. Thad was subsequently picked up by someone he mistook for his father and taken out on his own. Thaddeus indicated in his story that he was aware that someone had picked him up. At the very least, it was his father. When he opened his eyes, he noticed he was outside his residence. Thad knew he was in front of his neighbor's house when his kidnapper dragged him down. His abductor dropped him on the floor and asked him to follow him inside. Like someone who had been hypnotized, Thad heeded his instructions and followed him. Thad stated that his abductor first showed him the collection of toy cars he had. This reeled him in, as he was also interested in cars at that time. Thad was able to see his abductor's face. He was twice his size, but Thad believed that he was probably a friend of his brother and there was nothing to worry about. But just when Thad was getting comfortable with his supposed newly found friend, things turned for the worst. At this point, his abductor suddenly changed his mood. He grabbed him in his hands and threw him onto the bed. He was enraged and frantic. When Thad realized what was happening, he began to fight back, kicking as hard as he could, but was too weak compared to the energy of his abductor. The episodes that followed were filled with horror. His abductor broke Thad's right leg, but Thad managed to run outside the room, down the stairs, and into the kitchen. The Bonebreaker caught up with him and went ahead to break his right femur and back. All the while, he shrieked in excruciating pain. Thad was in so much pain that he passed out. When he regained consciousness, he saw his abductor sitting beside him with a very calm disposition. It was like seeing a totally different person. He was calm and friendly. The abductor then explained to Thad that he always had a fascination for bones. He encouraged Thad to sleep, and he fell asleep about 2 minutes later. Thad started to look around for objects he could defend himself with, but all he found were piles of trash, moldy leftovers, and dirty clothes. Thad tried to move off the couch but couldn't due to the intensity of the pain, and Thad lay there for the remainder of the night completely paralyzed by pain.
I wanted to get out of the closet, get back down the stairs to that phone. I started looking around and digging through stuff, and I found an old wooden electric guitar. I busted a panel off the door and was able to unlock it. And I remember when I busted the panel off the door, first thing that went through my head was, oh, you busted the door. No hesitation about making a break for it.
The next morning, Thad asked his abductor whether he could call his friends. Unfortunately, his abductor gave him a phone whose wire had been cut. Thad was buttered towards his abductor for pulling such an expensive prank on him. However, he knew better not to make him angry, so he decided to make friends with him. But this didn't last for long. The Bonebreaker was back. He took him upstairs and repeated yesterday's ordeal. This time, he focused on the right leg. At this point, he just knew that he had to find a way to escape from the Bonebreaker. So for some minutes, he kept telling the Bonebreaker his girlfriend, whom he had told Thad that he was expecting, was knocking on the door. After about 2 to 3 checks with no girlfriend in sight, the Bonebreaker got mad and told Thaddeus that he would amplify his torture. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and Bonebreaker decided to hide Thad in a closet. While in the closet, Thad knew that this was his only chance of survival, so he searched frantically for anything you could use to open the closet. He found a guitar and used it on the door. He got out of the closet and moved frantically downstairs towards the phone. Luckily, he was able to get to the phone before the Bonebreaker realized what was happening. He made a 911 call and the police came to the rescue. Thaddeus Phillips was not only able to survive the horrible experience from the Bonebreaker, his courage also put an end to the Bonebreaker's reign of terror.
Backwards.
Leaning backwards.
Facing the opposite direction. I should have been facing.
As soon as Thad became well again, he served as a witness in court concerning the Bonebreaker and was sentenced to 100 years imprisonment. Thaddeus Phillips was a brave 13-year-old who did not cower in the face of despair and held on till the very end.